And this week we've got Win Wolloff. Now, there's not much that Win has not done. Win has been a news photographer, a wedding photographer, portrait photographer, and for more than 40 years, he's owned his own commercial photo studio. He worked in the motorcycle industry. He's worked as a ski instructor, a musician, animal handler, and for the past 20 or so years, he's worked as a teacher. He's a very well-respected person and someone that I really admire. So, Win, I'm going to turn it over to you and looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
All right, I've got something to show you guys just to start off a little bit here. I will run this little 12-slide slideshow so you can see what we're going to be doing tonight. The first slide is one of my photo students who came on a job with me when we were photographing. That's my wife and one of our young friends. That's Alyssa, that's behind me. Lauren, Shauna, and Joanne. This is over in Orlando. Taylor Reed is the young musician, and this is what it looks like if you colorize it. Kendra is Alyssa's older sister. They are in a band together called the Redhead Express. There she is, colorized. This is the image we're going to work on tonight. Yolanda is a opera singer that I photographed for, and it's my brother. His birthday was the 1st of June. Noemi was a student of mine. This is from one of her selfies, and this is one of my high school friend's sons. And let's see if we can, I can't escape out of there. Help me, get me to escape. Now I'm going to jump over to Photoshop. And I have the picture of Sherry and her daughter that I started with. This picture is taken just a high key picture of mother and daughter, and just a lot of fun to play with. And what I've found more recently is that Luminar 4 has some really cool aspects to it that makes the pencil drawings even cooler. And by the way, if there are questions, whoever is monitoring, Chuck, if you're monitoring questions, just yell them out to me and I will try to address them as we go. So I made a duplicate layer and I am opening it in Luminar. I'm going to go into the portrait section in Luminar and really quick do a skin enhance, a little bit of shine removal, lighten the faces just a little bit. And this is the most important one for doing the pencil drawings. I could do this in Photoshop, but it's so fast in Luminar to do eye enhancement, eye whitening, and hang on a second, I gotta move everybody out of the way for a second, and teeth whitening, right about there. And that's all I do right now in Luminar for this particular part of it. And we'll just hit click apply, and it should take us back to Photoshop with the filter applied in the layer stack. Did you guys see it switch back? Okay,
yes.
Cool.
Yes, we did.
All right, so now we can see the before and after, and if you look at the eyes especially, it really makes a big difference. It helps the skin a lot, and it really makes a big difference on the eyes. And so from this point on, it'll all be in Photoshop. I'm going to duplicate the layer, Command J, or Control J on the PC. And I'm going to run a hue and saturation adjustment layer and take all the color out of the picture. And I'm going to duplicate the layer again. So now I have a layer stack of four layers. 2 of them are black and white. I'm going to take the top one and change the blend mode to divide. The screen should be white for everybody. I'm going to run a filter, a Gaussian blur filter. I've been experimenting with Gaussian blur and box blur to see which one I like better. You'll see that as you increase the blur, you get more information, and with it down here about 5 or 6 pixels, somewhere in almost 5, is pretty good. I like to keep it on the low side because it keeps the lines more fine. The higher you go, the thicker and less defined the lines get. We're going to make them darker real quick. And so I like this place to start. And so I'm going to collapse the layer stack up, Command Option Shift E. That makes a new layer from all the visible layers. Turn all the other ones off. I'm going to duplicate this layer one more time and change the blend mode to multiply. And I'm going to do that one more time because I wanted more definition, but I wanted to keep the lines fairly fine. That looks pretty good. And so I'm going to put those together again, Command Option Shift E. So now I have this final layer has been created by doing all these other layers. We're going to use those later, but right now that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to take a brush tool and I'm going to set the brush tool to overlay. And I'm going to choose a better brush. There we go. In overlay mode with the brush tool, black makes grays and darker, and white makes 50% gray and lighter. So we're going to work on this picture a little bit using the overlay brush. And we're going to start with it at about 30%. Type of 3 on the keyboard drops the opacity to 30%. I'm going to zoom in here. I don't get enough definition along the edge of her nose. I'm going to bracket key left to make that smaller and just trace along that line and just define that line a little bit more. Define the nose. I'm going to bring it back up to 100%. You can see it work faster. And I will give the lips a little bit more definition. And you can see where this will take some time. I'm going to go to about 40% and darken just her eyelashes. And I'm going to darken her mascara just a little bit. Make the brush a little bigger and give some more definition to her eyebrows. And go on over to Mom. Drop that down to 40% and do her eyelashes. And when you're doing this, you probably want to practice at low opacities to get a feel for how much change there is. I'm kind of doing this fairly ham-fistedly because of time constraints, but we're going to do the same thing. Just give her a little bit more definition on the lips. And this line here is darker than I want it to be, so I'm going to switch to white and bring the opacity up, and I can paint over this and lighten up that line. And I'm going to do it right along the side of her face as well. The shadow that was in there was stronger than I wanted it to be. Okay, that's better. And probably around Ashley's chin, just a little bit. I'm going to drop the opacity down to like 40% and just go through there like that. That just takes that down just a little bit. All right, I'm going to make the brush fairly big, switch back to black, go to 100%, and create some more definition in the hair. I'm using a Wacom pen, Wacom tablet, so that I can get in there and do this pretty freehand. And the brush is pressure sensitive. So if I press lightly, it's a very small brush. And if I press with more pressure, the brush fills out its normal size. There we go, just. That's pretty good. All right, we'll come zooming in here so you can get a look at what we're seeing. What I've been doing lately is making a duplicate layer, Command J. Because I went into Luminar, I'm in a 16-bit mode right now, so I'm going to drop it back to 8 bits per channel so the filter will work properly. I will go to Filters, Filter Gallery, and I'm going to use the crosshatch filter at a pretty short stroke length. So 7, 6, and 2 are the places that I've been using. So I'm going to hit that OK on that. Let that add a crosshatch, and I'm going to lower the opacity on this to about 50%. You do that by eye. It just gives a little bit of shading, just as if I used a pen to do the original drawing and was scratching in lines. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to make another duplicate copy of the non-filtered one, throw it on the top of the stack, and do another filter, filter gallery, crosshatch, but this time I'm going to make the crosses very long. Now, using the crosshatch filter is something that's fairly new in this process for me, at least, and we're going to lower the opacity on that quite a bit, all the way down to just over 50% usually. And I really like what it does everywhere except on their eyes. So I'm going to add a layer mask. And go back to normal and black and paint over the eyes to remove the long cross-hatching from the eyes. I like it everywhere else, so I'm going to leave it everywhere else, but I'm taking it off the eyes. And I think I'm going to lower the opacity on the tiny crosshatches a little bit more. Just a little bit. There you go. This is fairly close to finished. It doesn't take a long time to do this. I have found a couple of other things that I like to do, and so we'll move on from here. I'm going to merge up, again, Command Option Shift E, so that I have everything up there. And I'm going to make a very quick selection using the lasso tool. Obviously, I'm not making a precise selection in any way, shape, or form here. I'm going to add a little bit up here. I'm going to subtract, hold down the Option key, and subtract her face from the selection. I didn't do that when I did this the first time, and I had to go back and do a lot of retouching afterwards. So there we go. And just clean this up. And add a little bit right there. There we go. I'm going to launch that onto its own layer. Command J. And just so you can see what it is, that's what it is right there. I'm going to run a filter on that from Stylize. I use the oil paint filter in a lot of my paintings. I make a lot of selections and use the oil paint filter for a lot of things. Once again, all this step up. You'll continue to stay informed and stay engaged as we follow this journey together. I'm Lester. Say that again. I couldn't understand a word you said.
It was just someone else getting on when you're.
I use this oil paint filter because I really like what it does to the hair. I put the stylization pretty far to the right and let it go. Come on now. Don't do that to me. Okay, here we go. This is a pretty big file at this point, and I probably should have saved it. Let me see if I don't even know if I can cancel out of this. Just waiting for the computer for just a minute. There it goes. It's finally going. There we go. You can see what it did to the hair. I kind of like that look. And I can blend that in with the original by lowering the opacity. I just like the way it makes the hair look. Instead of this, we have that. Anybody have any questions so far? If there are no questions, we shall continue. When I first started doing this, I kind of finished with this at this point. And often I would put the finished pencil drawing onto a piece of parchment paper electronically and make it look like it was burned into the paper by giving it a colorization. And so one day somebody asked me, can you colorize this? I said, well, yeah, I think I probably can. And so what I did was take this layer, the original layer that I made in Luminar, and drag it up here to the top of the stack. There they are, back to where they used to be, and change the blend mode to hard light. And run a levels filter on that. Making sure that the levels is only affecting the color layer. Take the highlights way down and then lower the opacity. Run a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Take the saturation down just a little bit. There we go. I'll take it back up a little bit till I get the look that I'm looking for. There we are. And I always forget, and I lower the opacity on those two layers instead of lowering it on here. So now I've got to readjust everything. There we go. That looks better. And so in less time than it actually takes to talk about it, this is what we started with. Did the hair and added color, and it's almost done. All I need to do now is sign it, put Sherry and Ashley's names on it if that's what they originally wanted. A lot of people like it that way. Let me see if I can put this group of people up here. I'm going to put a new layer on top of everything. Grab a paintbrush. Make it smaller. Make my signature. use the type tool. And there it is, finished. Hopefully somebody will have some questions.
I got one for you, Glenn. This is Randy.
Hey, Randy.
I'm looking at kind of around the neck of Ashley.
In here?
Yeah, underneath that a little bit, right in there. Yeah, it seems a little muddy. Would you go in there and add some strands of hair or something, or it just
Sure.
it seems a little, just to me, I'm looking at it, just seems a little muddy.
I agree with you. And, when I say there it is finished, I mean, there it is ready for me to put another hour into it to get it to where I really want it. But I will do Command Option Shift E. So I have one to work on. So in case I screw it up, life won't suck too bad. We'll take a look at it fairly big. And it's right in this area here that's bothering you, huh?
Yep.
Well, one way to do that. I'll take just the lasso tool and just make a loose selection around that area. Switch to the patch tool. And patch it like that. I hid the marching ants. I'm pressing Shift Command F. I'm going to blend that in just a little bit. There. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. It just seemed a little muddy in that area.
Yeah, at this point, you can spend a lot of time. I don't particularly care for this look right here on Ashley's face. And so
yeah, it kind of looks like she has a 2-day shadow going
shadow,
on.
Yeah. I would probably back out to this area here. Somehow I managed to move them. I don't know how I did that. But anyway, I'd back out in here and use the brush tool with white in overlay. With this brush. Oops. And at a really low opacity, I'm going to start at 30% and just paint over that area and see if I'm making any difference. Let's go to 100% just so we can see it. Yeah, make sure that we're not looking. Yep, that's the only thing we're looking at.
Are your marching ants deselected? Even though you got them.
You know what? That was what it was. Thank you. And so now I can just lighten that area. I'd have to go back and redo the colorizations. Let me see here. I don't know if I can get away with it right now. So I can't really solve the problem effectively on the color layer. Mm-hmm. So I'd have to go all the way back. At this point, you can see that it's much better now. But this is uh, a half an hour's worth of what normally takes a couple of hours before I am completely satisfied with the way it looks.
Win,
Yes.
why would you darken the color in the darkening mode instead of just using the color you have and blending it in without causing the...
If you, let's go back, I'll show you why. When you put this here with nothing, just at hard light,
No, without hard light.
go right to normal,
Okay.
okay?
It is a little flat.
It's flatter. Yeah, I mean, if you go to hard light and then look, then flatten it, you have more control, so that you can make it look more like an illustration or less like an illustration, depending on what you want to do. So that here in this, like this one, for example, looks very much like an illustrated piece.
Yes.
And this was taken from a website. This young man is the fellow who runs the Beau Rivage Casino in Mississippi. And he happens to be the son of one of my high school classmates. And so I made this for her. And it looks more like a 50s illustration. My idea for this is to make them look kind of like the Vargas cartoons in Vargas illustrations in Playboy magazine. The same kind of look. And again, we'll go back to Lightroom and you can see the ones that I spent some time on. The color ones that I spent some time on have a feel to them that I really like.
I like that one.
I like this one a lot. She wore clothes that worked out really well, and the skin tone here is painted in rather than the skin tone from her original picture. Any more questions? Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Win, that was absolutely awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. To recap, maybe, the trick is to start with your photograph that you made. I used, let's see here. I used Luminar to open up the eyes and give a little bit more definition in the eyes. Luminar does a great job of that. Duplicate the layers and go to the divide blend mode and run a blur filter until you begin to get the pencil drawing effect. Merge up, duplicate the layer and go to multiply. And I did it twice because I wanted to get some punch. And probably right in here is where I should have, I did some painting on everything to define the nose area and everything else. Merged up, added the crosshatch filters, used oil paint for the hair. It really does a nice job on making the hair look like it was drawn. And then I had put this up here to colorize it. And there's your final. This,
Man, I'm so glad we're recording this. That's a lot of steps, but a really astounding result.
it is a lot of steps, and it becomes as complicated as you want to make it. I've been messing with these for a while now.
When can we get you to unshare your screen?
Sure.
Well, one thing we know is that it always takes work to do excellent work.
I've been messing with it for a while now and finding different ways to make it work. I use this technique a lot when I do digital painting. I always wanted to be able to draw and be able to paint and can't, which is one of the reasons I'm a photographer. My old business partner was a terrific manual artist. David could draw and David could paint, and he knew all the techniques, went to school for it, and was fabulous at it. And what I have done is using this same technique and taking it a little further is that after it's colorized, select individual portions of the colorized version and apply the oil paint filter in a lot of different configurations to make it look like I spent a lot of time with a brush going in different directions. It takes a long time. It takes as much time as it would take to paint it because you make a lot of different selections. The selection I made around the hair, for example. When I do a painting, you can spend days on it. So, I have a painting I did of a waterfall, and it's 24 by 24 inch vinyl. And there's about 8 selections just for the different colors of foliage, all of which are affected a different way. And so it's fun to do. It takes for a while to get them done. This is relatively quick. To do a picture like is behind me, that I can usually do in about a half an hour, to the point where I'm pleased with it. And if I don't have to explain it as I go, it goes. The first 15 minutes goes almost automatically. I expect you could probably write an action to do the first part up to where you started applying the crosshatch filters. It would. I mean, you could find. I find that I switch between box blur and Gaussian blur a lot, because it gives a different effect. And I haven't even begun to experiment with all the other blur tools that are in there to see what kind of an effect that would make. That's for a future situation. But I think it's a lot of fun. I hope that it's some could offer